Hello everyone, AJ for the Mighty Glue Stick, your D&D infotainment bucket of nuggets, and it is time, oh yes, to return to the subject of dragons, because as has been pointed out on more than a few times by faithful, patient and studious followers of the channel, yes, you're quite right, I've not covered all of the dragons. I've just covered most of the main dragons listed in the monster manual, but I did miss the shadow dragon, the gem dragons, the ferrous dragons, the planet dragons, though I did cover the rust dragon when I talked about Charon, and the epic dragons, the lung dragons, the grey dragons, brown dragons, and of course the Dracolich. So for the next little while, I'm going to talk about some more exotic dragons. Hope that pleases you. First, I want to concentrate on the rare chromatic dragons, and we shall start with the most frequently requested, yes, good friends, let's talk about the deep dragon, otherwise known as the purple dragon. Don't worry, I'll bring you some more Mage Bane monsters later on, and we're going to be getting to the Druid character class all in good time. And as always, it's my channel, I do what I want! Purple dragons are rare, or at least they seem to be, thanks to the epic scale of the subsurface world inside Toril, and the habit of deep dragons to delve to the furthest reaches of it. The true number of deep dragons is very hard to estimate, but I suspect they may exist in vast numbers. Vast. Deep dragons rarely become involved in the affairs of the surface world. Those who do would be considered unusual among their own kind, much like the surface-dwelling drow, and for much the same reason. Sunlight is the bane of deep dragons, and they find the dominance of the good-aligned humanoids to be quite intolerable. They just don't like it on the surface world. A few deep dragons have been named, though. They're well known. Zispora, who was was a two-headed purple dragon mutated by constant exposure to the Underdark energy called Faerzris. She killed her own mate, another deep dragon and ally of the Dragon's Horde group in Skullport, a dragon known as Farx. And there was also Faezeroth, who lairs near the drow city of Erelhi Xinlu. So, what is a deep dragon? They are a member of the chromatic dragon subspecies, as mentioned. They are purple, though often in the gloomy environs of the Underdark, many observers will make the mistake of thinking they are a different version of the black dragon, probably a fatal error. Though they do have many similarities, they are not the same. I mean, you can tell by looking at the horns of these things, which look slicked back. Even in other guises, they look sleek and slicked back. Sleek, lean, sinuous, long, and well-suited to moving through caverns and tunnels, deep dragons eat primarily the pale, sightless fish that dwell in underground lakes and seas, though they eat most things, including fungus, insects, all manner of underdark creatures, but they prefer the fish. Unlike other chromatic dragons, purple dragons are accomplished shape changers, with a natural ability that becomes more refined with age. As a hatchling, they can assume the form of a winged serpent. This is usually the form they take when they are worming their way through the deep and narrow passages. They gain the ability to take on a humanoid form by the time they're juveniles, and they can polymorph into a humanoid 3 times a day, and more as they age, until they can just assume the form of a humanoid as long as they wish. An adult deep dragon can pass themselves off as a specific humanoid, though they probably don't speak common very well, being fluent in undercommon as well as draconic. Gives them an interesting accent. Old dragons can pass themselves off as a very convincing humanoid NPC and probably have a number of aliases they can assume depending on the need and the area, much like espionage agents. They are, as a breed, far more inclined to chaotic evil alignment, and they have a great love of stalking prey through the Underdark. For them, pursuit and cruel murder is a sport. However, they also have a great love of exploration, and this is probably the adventurer's best bet to avoid becoming a meal, but more on that in a minute. I have seen reports and heard the rumours that deep dragons have potent psychic powers and breathe some sort of hallucinogenic breath weapon. This is a variant introduced in 4th edition D&D, and I would suggest it may be a mutation caused by living deep underground close to the areas with far-round portals nearby, or by living in areas rich with Faerzris, in which case they probably do have some potent psychic powers. This is represented perfectly well by the ability to use spell effects of command and dominate a certain number of times per day, and it can be the same range as a breath weapon, reasonably short range, say 150 feet or 200 feet or so, or less. Those who save against the effect would also be immune to further domination from the dragon for the next 24 hours, so limited use. Deep dragons breathe a cone of flesh-corroding gas, not a line of acid. This is very effective in an underground environment where they can fill an entire chamber and melt a whole slew of victims. They can also breathe bubbles into a pool and kill a lot of fish, which makes it an easy meal. Normally, deep dragons reside about 7 miles down in the mid-Underdark, and they are frequently found near drow habitation zones. The dragons are fastidious collectors of treasure and tend to have a pretty substantial hoard, even by dragon standards, but getting to their lairs is very difficult as they locate them in labyrinthine mazes of twisting and confusing tunnels, sheer shafts, chasms, flooded passages, chambers filled with noxious gas, poisonous spiders, pools of acid, and lots of mushrooms. They're immune to acid, of course, such as shriekers, violent fungus, that sort of thing, myconids. Purple dragons are quite capable of harvesting the spores of myconids and using them against foes also, particularly due to their habit of sneaking around and observing creatures before they decide they go in to attack them or not. Striking from a position of stealth is what they do. And why not gently empty many pouches of pacifying or hallucination spores and then breathe out a non-acidic cone of breath so the victims are suddenly standing in a breeze of spores and making saving throws or being stunned, poisoned, and otherwise incapacitated before the dragon even leaves its hiding spot. Why not? Deep dragons have some of the traits of the black dragons, some of the traits of green dragons, and are less prone to spending large amounts of time in their lair. Instead, they love to explore and stay on the move. They value the freedom hugely. They get freedom of movement, and they can have a fickle, cruel quality to them. They generally don't care about other creatures except how those creatures are of use to them. The moment they have no use, they're just something else to hunt and kill. They have the green dragon's talent for manipulation and will acquire items of spell knowledge that allows them to charm, bind, coerce other creatures. But they will usually, by adulthood, have an alliance with a drow noble house or a Fomorian court or a Dwagar clan, and they can cultivate a tribe of kobolds that acts as a wide-ranging spy network who is well-versed in sabotage and misdirection. Why? Well, if a community is causing them problems, they will simply attack another community in secret. Then plant evidence that the community that they want to stop bothering them is the perpetrator of that attack. Keep your friends close and under your control, and your enemies at each other's throat would be the motto of a deep dragon. They also collect magic items which help them deal with heat as they delve deeply and it is hot down there. Lots of geothermal energy going on. Something to keep in mind when adventuring in the deep places is that it's as hot and wet as a tropical jungle down there. Deep underground, it's warm, very warm. They only cohabitate with other purple dragons if they're a particularly close clutch siblings who work together to survive, or if they're a mated pair. They lay clutches of 6 eggs. They just lay them and leave them. The eggs incubate for the first 8 months inside the mother and then for another 17 months after they're laid. The mother will not lay them in her lair. She will look for places that are protected by animate spirits, undead creatures. Why would she do that? Well, when the purple dragon makes its way beyond the Underdark to the surface world, it is not the prime material world they frequent, it is the Shadowfell. And in the Shadowfell, having necromantic powers is a huge advantage. So they lay their eggs in areas rich in this energy in the hopes that it will filter into the eggs and alter the offspring. Sometimes this works and gives the purple dragons some kind of power. Other times it works perfectly and they hatch as shadow dragons. More about them in another video. About half the hatchlings die shortly after they hatch, either because they're killed by the siblings or predators or just the environment itself. But that's still a pretty high success rate for an apex predator species. So that's one thing that made me think there's quite a few of them. They have a speed of 40 feet around on foot and climb very well, usually magically enhanced. They fly well as youngsters but get more clumsy as they get older and larger. Their wings don't have enough surface area and the body is very long, so while they do reach a speed of 150 feet around in flight, it's not a very graceful flight, kind of hanging in the air like a snake on a rope. They swim at 30 feet per round and can burrow 20 feet around. The hoard of a deep dragon is full of knowledge. They collect maps, books, items to aid them in their exploration, and the odd items that they find and collect along the way. One interesting item might be a necromantically preserved skull, which the dried brain inside it has been loaded up with the knowledge of a particular location, and one need only ask the skull and it will animate and tell you what the content of its head book. Grisly but interesting. otherwise harmless. So they collect books. In many ways, their hoard and lair are just their base camp and trophy rooms, a place to rest and make plans for the next expedition. And this makes them a particularly good prize for adventurers, as almost always they'll have a fortune in old treasure maps, locations of lost ruins, leads and clues for years and years worth of travel, risk, and potentially tremendous profits. Because they are so curious, they will take on a humanoid form and go and hang out in taverns, drinking and listening to adventurous tales of distant locations. They will seem very generous to those who have the most to say about the most distant locations, at the same time utterly bored and full of contempt for anyone else that may, or anything else that's said or done around them. They have no time for anything but their own personal goals, their agenda, and will only lift a finger to help anyone if it means more information they can acquire. This single-minded focus and selfishness will seem odd, and as will their strange accent and the lingering, though slight smell of old fish, mushrooms, and just a hint of rotten lemon. Those who get too close may find the breath of a polymorph purple dragon causes the eyes to cloud with tears. The eyes of the deep dragon in a humanoid form will be preternaturally sharp. They can see in absolute darkness, after all, with blindsight out to 60 feet. They can also see right through illusions, having true sight from the moment they hatch. They can not be charmed and can detect magic with just a moment of concentration, so they're one of the most perceptive of the kinds of chromatic dragon. Also, they can take half damage from heat and cold. The general belief of experts on the lore of dragons has it that chromatic dragons cannot polymorph like metallic dragons can, unless by spell magic, so a purple dragon can fool sages simply by performing this act in front of them, because they will assume that this dragon is one of the good kind, based solely on this mistaken fact, an assumption. Anyway, away from the Underdark, the deep dragon will lose its connection to the strange power of the Faer'sress. This is the flow of purple-hued energy that flows beneath the surface of Faerun, and it means the means by which the drow strengthen their swords, armor, and spells. Being creatures of magic, the deep dragons draw this magic into themselves and become conduits. They emanate a dragon fear effect, and also they can cause nightmares in those who enter into the lair of an ancient purple dragon. And also, when they reach truly venerable age and actually subsume their energy into the environment, they may cause an area which is beset by nightmares and necromantic power for many, many years to come. So, yeah. They also get the ability to pass through walls, shape stone and turn it into mud and then back again, and allows them to construct their twisted lairs and also dictate the direction their prey must travel underground. As they seal one way and leave another open, the victims will be caught like a rat in a maze. Deep dragons can and do collect networks of minions. They will use necromancy to animate the dead. They have their stealthy kobolds. They particularly favour the winged Erd kobolds, as they make such good spies. They avoid aberrations such as beholders, illithid, and aboleth, but find the attitude of the drow to be similar in many ways to their own, so not too bad. And that's about it for the purple dragons. Thanks for the request, and for more dragons, I'll be bringing you a few more at a time as we get into the druid character class. As always, thank you for my Patreon subscribers. Thank you very much. And thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon.